and I'm pleased to welcome Sherry Benson-Podolchuk. Hopefully I said your last name right.
Close enough, Podolchuk.
Close enough. From the Canadian Institute of Workplace Bullying and Harassment Resources. Sherry is a retired police officer with Canada's National Police Force, the Royal Canadian Mounted, the RCMP. Sherry has published 3 books. The first one titled Women Not Wanted. This is about her 20-year career and how she dealt with workplace conflict, bullying, and sexual harassment. Sherry has a BA in conflict resolution studies, and since retiring, works as a professional educator and consultant, focusing on workplace conflict and helping others find their voice. So welcome, Sherry, and I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and share the importance. I'm not sure if anyone tuned into our little brief conversation before while you were having lunch, but it's a pleasure to be here to share with you the importance about creating a healthier workplace culture, but also through understanding the need for effective leadership, awareness, and teamwork, because really creating a healthy workplace is teamwork. My aunt was 101 and a half when she died. And I used to ask her, Auntie, what is it like to be 99, 100? And she just kept going. And she'd say, Sherry, you know, we're here to learn lessons. And I thought, well, that really, you know, she said, everyone has a story. We're all here to learn lessons. And I thought, that's great. And then we're here to share those lessons so that other people don't have to suffer. And that makes sense to me because we are the writer and editor of our own story, we can change and edit how our story ends. And that means we can change and edit how we want our workplace. And speaking from 20 years of workplace bullying, violence, sexual violence, harassment, you name it, I experienced it. It's important to share those lessons so that other people don't have to suffer. And then you can create awareness and tools and strategies for the people in the workplace, but also for leadership. What we know, we can't unknow. And it's not a surprise that the last 2 years, every workplace has been literally turned upside down, flipped over, rolled around on its head because of COVID. There is no one size fits all, and we have all been trying to desperately figure out what works for our staff, our clients, and ourselves as managers. The added stress, the financial burden, and then you have everybody has their own opinion, and that can really take up a whole 5 hours of everyone's opinion, confusion. It's important to know that with that added stress in the workplace, not everybody has very good coping skills. And my work has actually really increased because of that. People would say, well, you know, this was okay, and now it's really bothering me. And so it's really important that you teach your staff, your clients, everybody has the right to speak up because their voice counts, no matter what it might be. And then it's important to speak up for those who remain silent. People who remain silent when they're experiencing bullying in the workplace doesn't mean everything's fine. And quite often the vulnerable lose the ability to speak up. They lose believing that they can speak up. And then be curious about your own patterns of behavior and how you think, how you react to different things. Because when we are looking at ourselves through curiosity, we're looking through a different kind of lens, less judgment and more compassion. And then when you're curious about what's happening for someone else, why are they behaving this way? What's wrong with them? We can be curious. And again, it's that lens of curiosity and compassion. And that's changes the dynamics in how you are dealing with that particular person. And then know that you and only you can create your own happiness, and encouraging your staff to have a work-life balance by creating tools and strategies that will help them not only in the workplace if they're experiencing bullying, but also in their home life. Because it can be very stressful not having coping skills. And we've seen that. What you repress, you eventually express. And here's an example. After my first detachment, dealing with workplace bullying, which was a daily occurrence, I would paint my nails. And I mentioned this in my TED talk. And of course, everyone's toolkit will look different. But looking back from today, this was one of my very first self-care tools and strategies so that I could survive workplace bullying. So if it was before a night shift, I would paint my nails with my daughter. She was just 3 years old. We would have fun, wild and crazy colors. And if it was after a night shift, then I would have a cup of tea and enjoy painting my nails. Now, no one could see the colors of my nails because they were in my boots. I never wore it on my hands. We weren't allowed to. But it was something little. And this is what people need to realize. It's the little things you do that recharge your emotional and physical fuel cells so that you can go back and face another day, another week, another month, another year, another decade in the workplace, especially if it doesn't change. These are the tools that will help anyone, particularly people who are experiencing workplace bullying. Because stress wears us down and none of us is invincible. And long-term stress, we know, is a killer. First of all, I want to start off with some free resources. So these will all be a handout that Dana will send to you, and you can look up the different free resources on Linda's website. And it's really important that staff and clients know that management has their back. No matter what happens, they have their back, and they will investigate complaints thoroughly and respectfully. And having policies and procedures are really important. But I'll tell you from my own experience that these policies and procedures, rules and regulations are only as effective as the people who are willing to enforce them. And I have experienced that. I see people who work in HR, they don't, or they're afraid follow through with the harassment and respectful workplace because of retribution from higher up. So once again, just having the binders on the wall, if you don't enforce it, they're just fancy words. And I remember in training that there are two things that they taught us. One, never to lie, and two, that the law was sacrosanct. And at no time was I above the law. And I still am that way 10 years after retiring. However, they didn't teach us what to do when you come to work and your partner's drunk and wants you to lie about his impaired driving in his car accident. They didn't tell us what to do when we experience sexual violence. They didn't tell us what to do when there's covert bullying and no one wants to talk to you. They didn't tell us what to do when no one backs you up on a very violent domestic call because you've spoken up about workplace bullying. Now, thankfully, the world has changed. The RCMP is changing slowly. And most places have embraced these respectful workplace policies. However, like I said before, if you don't enforce them, then they're useless. And here are 13 psychosocial factors that impact all employees, our mental health. And as you can see, like civility and respect, these are kind of common sense, how the impact it has on you. And because we are all different, we might have all of these, or we might just experience a few of these. And I think it's really important that no matter where you are, a good employee is like gold. I take myself as an example. They spent $120,000 training me, and that includes my 6 months of training, all the staff, the food, room and board, and then to only abuse your employees so that they leave after 2 or 3 years. Does that even make good business sense? Now, thankfully, like I said, the world has changed. And it's important that everybody knows the rules and regulations and the impact. And psychological hazards, they slowly wear people down. And I can remember, I saw firsthand over the years, the failure to protect the employees because, oh, wait a minute, he's a good employee and he makes us a lot of money. Where have we heard that? Harvey Weinstein, Gian Gameshi, nobody did anything because they're making money. They're good producers, and that you're failing your employees with that. And here's a classic example I can take from my own experience. When I first moved from Tisdale to Selkirk Highway Patrol, there was an individual there, and he was bragging about this particular this sex tape he had made with a mother and a daughter. And that was the weirdest freaking thing I'd ever heard of. And everybody knew, the detachment commanders, all the staff there before me knew all about this, and nobody did anything. And as a result, his behavior was condoned, and it escalated to the point where he committed sexual assault because nobody said anything. Now, C65 came into last year. So hooray, hooray, things are changing. But like I said, it takes time, because sometimes the leadership might say this is a great idea, but getting it down to the bottom is very difficult. And I can say from my experience in the RCMP that I see a lot of changes at the top, but having it ripple down to the staff so that they can actually get it and enforce it and believe in it and transform their workplace culture is another story, and it's taking time. And what a respectful workplace looks and feels like will be different. I mean, some of the people I worked with thought it was funny, at parties to do, say and do disgusting things. So a healthy workplace, a respectful workplace, is a different expression. So you need laws to actually define it and remind people what it looks like. Now, covert bullying is a little bit more difficult to prove. For example, I remember I mentioned I came to work one day and my partner with 15 years of service was drunk. And before I had a chance to drive him home, he took off in his car and he crashed into a parked car, staggered to the house, staggered back, forced another vehicle off the road and just barely made it into his driveway. Now, with later when we spoke and I took a statement I wrote a statement, saw what happened. I took a statement from the witness and I was about to hand it in. And I said, here, these are the two statements. What is your statement going to say? It needs to reflect the truth. And I read his statement and I was very sad to see that he said his foot got caught in the carpet. That's why he slammed into the parked car. And he goes, right? And I went, no, I'll take a bullet for you, buddy, but I'm never going to lie. As a police officer, if you are a liar, you might as well quit, because how can your credibility ever stand up in court? And so I would take a bullet for my partner, but I would never lie. Well, of course, he didn't change his statement. And my boss, instead of, saying, Sherry, that must have been a very difficult evening for you. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Congratulations on doing the right thing. All he did was yell and scream at me and swear at me for half an hour in his office so everybody could hear that I should have kept it in-house. Now, remember what I told you, that we were told never to lie and the law was sacrosanct. So just because he came to work drunk and got in a car accident didn't mean he shouldn't be charged with impaired driving. And eventually he was. The sad thing is, immediately, and this can happen in any workplace, there was covert bullying where people didn't talk to me. They wouldn't, if we were working on a file together, they would just write a nasty note and go on my file. If the phone was for me, they'd just say, Benson, not Sherry, the phone's for you. It's blah, blah, blah. They were very rude. Nobody talked to me. They wouldn't even back me up on a domestic violent call. So you can see how easy it can happen. And eventually victims start to believe that there must be something wrong with me. And that's because management failed to follow those policies on creating a respectful workplace. It would have just taken one guy to say, hey, man, don't say that. Don't call her those names. Or, Sherry, imagine the difficult situation she had to be in. What would we have done? It was not like that at all. At the very beginning of my career, quite quickly what happens when people don't speak up, or when they speak up and the leaders just funk them. It's the most destructive thing you can ever experience. Actually, you're not going to like this, see the statistics here. 74% of bullying comes from leadership. And it may not be like they come out and yell and scream at you, which I experienced, or it's just they don't do anything. So by not doing anything, you are part of the problem. Bullies victims in the workplace, they are just trying to survive. So people come to work and they're just trying to do their best job and survive. But I'll tell you, there's never an excuse for abuse. And it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And we can always learn another way. It's an active choice to support victims of bullying. I mean, you don't have to like everybody and you don't even have to agree with them. You just need to be respectful and investigate. And not everybody promoted into or in a management role. And I've seen this in with my dad in the care home here, that not everybody in a management role has the right stuff. And as leaders, we need to reflect on, okay, I'm in this leadership role. Do I have the right stuff? What does that look like? the most important thing to me is self-awareness, mindfulness, accountability, and empathy. Not everybody has the same leadership style. Some people are micromanagers. I can't stand that. And some people love that. Some people are hands off, and I like that. And other people hate that. So it's getting to know your staff, it's getting to know yourself, and being willing to seek outside supports when you don't have all the answers. I mean, I learn all the time of different tools and strategies about addressing workplace bullying, because there is no one size fits all, because everybody's different and every workplace is different. I think it's really important that leaders and bullies, these are two things we choose to be. You choose to be a leader and you choose to be a bully. And management has a responsibility to provide a safe and healthy workplace. And clients and families have to know their rules and responsibilities too, but also not, when they speak up, not feel that fear of retribution for their family members. And that is a reality for most people that I have spoken to in the care homes. So just briefly, these are some tactics, of course, and I've experienced them all: gossiping, humiliating people, standing at the water cooler, or, you know, when someone walks in the room, you just look at them up and down and ignore them. Finding fault or mocking someone if they make a mistake, because let's face it, we're all perfectly flawed. And bullies are like predators. They seek out their victims, and they really do know who is a perfect target. And they know the setting to create that their target, because they know the people around won't say anything. And basically anybody can be a victim of bullying. It's people who don't fit into the workplace culture, people who are considered the other. So that could be body size, the color of your hair, the shape of your teeth. One time I was doing a presentation, they didn't like my teeth. Like, I'm thinking, okay, you don't like my teeth? I don't really care, but did you like anything that I said? Did I say anything that was important about, you know, creating a workplace? But all they could comment on was my teeth, and it wasn't flattering. So it's whatever. And then religion, you know, different religion, cultures. We've seen this in society, how we can be so polarized, the vaxxers, the anti-vaxxers, the maskers, the anti. Is there no somewhere we can get in between there? How you identify. My daughter identifies as queer. So she experienced a different kind of targeted bullying in the academic world. Like, really, we're supposed to be professional. So anybody can become a target. Whoop. Sorry about that. So here again, you know, bullies, harassers, or bullies. Okay, so there's a fine line between there. And as you can see, there's a hurt person is a damaged person. So you can see here a parent role model, teacher encourage aggressive behavior. We see that in schools. People can be suffering from physical or mental illness. And so there's all sorts of reasons why that people can become a bully in the workplace, but that doesn't mean we condone it. We have to give them the support that they need to not behave that way. Now, we can't change people, but what we can do is make it uncomfortable for the bully to work in that place. They may still think all sorts of negative things, but they won't respond if they know. They won't say things if they know that the workplace culture is protecting the victims. And sometimes you need further training, individual training for the staff, and then you can, okay, who's the most common factor in this workplace? We seem to move this person around and there's problems everywhere they go. Maybe we need to address that problem. If you think about it, we only see a snapshot of people and we have no idea what's happening for them. So when we are curious, everyone will have their own map of reality. And this is where we come from, our family, our history, our experiences, our culture, our religion, all that create us. And you can imagine, even today, each of you will have your own story, your own map of reality, and what's created who you are today. And the coping skills we had as children may not be as effective as adults. And sometimes that's where awareness is really important. What's working, what's not? Did I respond well? And this isn't blaming yourself. This is just self-awareness. And because I like to always remind people, we're not flawed, we are beautifully unique. We have beautiful flaws and they're just ours. But it's important we can also recognize perhaps our unconscious biases that we're not even aware of. And I speak from experience, having to be aware of that not all the police are horrible people. And that took a few years to figure that out. And let's face it, workplace bullying does not stop at the parking lot. It ripples into all aspects of the victim's life. Now, we make mistakes, and I've seen it, and we have seen it. I'm sure you have too. When we minimize the behavior, even victims tend to say, oh, it wasn't that bad, hoping it will go away, hoping it will stop, but it doesn't. Workplace bullying is like domestic violence. If you don't do something, it only escalates. And here's another example. After I turned in my partner of 15 years, and there was covert bullying, nobody talked to me. And so I had to go to a domestic violence call, and the partner, intentionally didn't back me up. Then another time I came to work and they had rigged the bathroom door so that it would fall on my face. And later it was determined that someone had intentionally pulled out the screws. So you can see there's a slow escalation in violence, but quite often people aren't even aware of it. And it can become like a sea of bullying where you're just trying to navigate through the waves. And here, this is really interesting. I love this slide because it talks about body language. How many times have you been talking to someone with a very intimate conversation, a very serious conversation, and they just sort of look away, they don't pay attention, no eye contact, and they look like they're thinking about baseball or hockey or COVID or something, anything than what's happening right now. And that is so devastating to victims. Active listening, this is for, as management, active listening is really important because I'll tell you, I find it exhausting because you are listening to that person, every single word, and then you're pausing as it's swirling around in your head, and then you formulate an answer. If you're already formulating an answer or a response before the person's finished talking, then that is not active listening. And it's exhausting. And it's a learned, you have to learn it. We didn't learn that, I didn't anyway, when we were younger, but it's never too late to learn. And like I said, it can be exhausting. And your body language, it really shows a negative or positive impact for the victim. Are you interested or are you not? What is your body language saying? So bullying requires a target. And of course, as you know, anybody can be a target. And there is a difference. I mean, we have rude people, cut you off in traffic, step in front of you. That's being rude. There is a difference. And it's important we nip that very early because it like I said before, it only escalates. And part of management's role is encouraging your staff to understand the importance of effective communication and listening skills. And the two are woven together when any kind of relationship and any kind of communication. And how do you help your staff? You want to help your staff when their emotions are high. How do we do that? Well, there's a few things you can teach them, and it's good for anybody, is remaining calm. Deep breathing is one that's really effective. Splashing some cold water on your face, understanding the importance of being able to step back instead of letting it escalate, being able to step back. And to recognize fear is not going to help. Being too afraid to speak up isn't going to solve the problem. By remaining silent, that is part of the problem. People say, I don't have a choice. If I do this, I do that. It's not a choice. And I say, it is a choice. Doing nothing is a choice. It's not effective or empowering, but it's a choice. And having workshops on a work-life balance and how effective, improving their communication skills and understanding. I mean, remember, quite often we might have language barriers or, people who have come from another country. So they might have one way of communicating, and it could be lost in translation where it's now an insult to them and we don't even recognize that. That's where being aware is so important. And when I made reference to bullying, and your mind is OTS all the time. Imagine a nurse or a police officer coming to work and they're so worried about being bullied that they're not thinking about their job. I mean, they're physically there, they're putting in the needle, they're doing this, they're doing that, but their mind is OTS out there somewhere, thinking about, did I remember to, do this? Did I remember to do that? What's my boss going to say? What, I'm working with this person. Well, how, last time they yelled at me because I did this, maybe I shouldn't do that. What about doing that? They are constantly on high alert, and that is not good for our bodies. Having that, stress hormone racing through our body all the time isn't healthy at all. Like I said before, it's not what you say, but how you say it. Now, there's a difference between someone who's a tough leader and a bully. And I've worked for both. A tough leader might be someone who might raise his voice, but they might be open to, such and such a person, David, when we're talking and you raise your voice, I feel intimidated. Can you just, lower the volume? Now, a tough boss would probably do that. A bully would say, screw you, I'm going to say whatever I want. So there is a difference. And a bully doesn't care. Their main intent is to hurt, to have power over, to humiliate, and to destroy. And a bully in the workplace, a bully in cyberspace, boardroom, leadership, they are all bullies with the same intent. Now, most people hate conflict, and I know I do, and they would rather just ignore what's happening, or if they've tried to address the bullying or the conflict and it doesn't work, I'll just pretend it's going to go away, and doing nothing, saying nothing changes, and we have more problems. It just escalates, but the silence of bystanders is awful. It's deafening in many cases, because if everybody said, don't say that to her, don't say that to him, they would stop. They might still think that, but they wouldn't say it. And that's important. And here's a few risk factors. So lack of mentoring and monitoring leaders and staff. Okay, that happens a lot. Okay, this person looks like they're really efficient. We're just going to leave them alone. Well, maybe they're really efficient right now, but they might need, if you're not able to help them, or if they feel too afraid to ask for help. And I remember talking to this nurse. She was a head nurse out here in Manitoba, and she was in charge of a teaching hospital. And she said that when she would deliberately be rude and cruel and bully the students coming in, because she was afraid one of them would ask her a question that she couldn't answer. Now, does that make any sense? That makes no sense. So it was a little bit of work for her to try and figure out her own survivor behaviors, her own insecurities, and recognizing and feeling, okay, I don't know everything. We don't know everything. If we did, we would be, we would probably have a better paying job if we knew absolutely everything, and we don't. So, and here, another thing, unresolved staffing issues. And of course, right now there is a staff shortage most places. I see it everywhere. So that adds added stress, but also, you pick a favorite one. So you don't have to like everybody, but you need to treat them and appear to be treating them all the same. And that's not always an easy task. From the book, I read this really good book. It's called The Body Keeps the Score, by Bessel van der Kolk. I hope I said it right. That every trauma, every negative experience gets logged into our body. And when we are under that constant stress, where our mind is OTS, it just wears us down and makes us sick. What we repress, we express in unhealthy patterns of behavior. I look at bullying like under the bullying umbrella. So we have misogyny, exclusion, racism, the other, conflicts, homophobia, and then we have all this that goes with that. The impact on the victims that they feel. And I've developed celiac disease. I had 5 miscarriages. Some people think about suicide. There was a point where I was standing on that abyss, and thankfully I was able to step back, but you can see how it just slowly wears people down. And any workplace, none of us is invincible, and slowly it wears down. And so one of the things that management can do is make it safe for people to speak up. show them what it looks like, provide a safe work, provide an opportunity for them to even speak anonymously. Because being silent enables the abuse. It just keeps it going and nobody wins. And then the problem is, oh, you're too weak, you're too sensitive, you're not one of the boys, you're not one of the girls. Why did you pick this profession? You're just a loser. You don't know anything. How did you graduate? They say all those things like that. And speaking from experience, you start to really, truly believe that. And what they quite often, they'll move this toxic, dysfunctional, unhappy person from place to place. And where have we seen that? In the military, in the Catholic Church, in the RCMP. When you move your problem around, you're spreading your problem around. It's like a cancer cell. You've just infected another workplace. Now, the effects of workplace harassment and bullying, well, like I've mentioned before, is damage to the victims, damage to the workplace, the lawsuits, motivation of your staff. And, you know, the reputation is huge. I mean, look at the RCMP in the military now. Oh my gosh, those are all the things we hear. You don't hear many of the good things, but you're hearing all the different sexual harassment and bullying complaints that are now in lawsuits, and nobody wins in a lawsuit. And the true financial impact of the cost for people, you know, experiencing workplace bullying and mental health, I think is a lot higher, because people are afraid to say they're dealing with mental health. They're afraid to say, I'm being bullied. So when they quit their job and it's not documented that they had come forward about bullying, they don't get, that causes some financial strain with regards to unemployment insurance and also their insurance companies. Well, you didn't say anything, so there's no documentation of you being bullied. So you just quit. That's not enough. And remember, our policies and procedures are only as effective as us who are willing to enforce them. Now, what can I do? What can management do? The power of the pen. Document, document, document. I would tell people to document, encourage them to document, encourage them to speak up, show them how to do that. Maybe you have a form that they can fill out. Is it anonymous? What do they need to do? And investigate the complaints in a timely fashion. And depending on the seriousness, you know, just make effort to not put that person back in the same place with the perpetrator. And that is quite often, that's what happens. Okay, well, they address this conflict, they address this complaint. Now you're going to go back working together. Well, sometimes they need a little bit of space to learn to accept what's happened and find another way to work together. It doesn't always work, but if you can be mindful of that when you are dealing with the complaints, that really is beneficial. I have observed when they've done that, and then I have seen more times than not where they have sent the perpetrator back into the detachment or back into the nursing station, back into the office, where that person just causes havoc all over again, except they're smarter now and they're more covert in their bullying. And they're more strategic in having to seek out and destroy the person who spoke up. So there is some decision-making there, but you have the power to do that. It's just that you're only as limited as how creative you want to be in addressing these. And if you look at it, all of our workplaces are very fluid. People come in, people come out, and because we're human, it's a living organism. And people, you know, I watched my first year at my detachment, it was wonderful. And then 2 people came out and 2 people came in, and they ruined it because there was ineffectual management. And I think it's important that your staff, all staff, understand the importance of effective communication. So when you're feeling overwhelmed and overstressed, teaching your staff to have those tools to calm themselves down, to separate, have a few key phrases when someone's yelling at you. For example, Dave, when you yell at me like that in front of everyone, I feel embarrassed. Please stop. I'm sorry I made that mistake. Thank you very much. But when you yell at me like that, that doesn't help me. It makes me frightened. Teaching them a few catchphrases so they can feel empowered to speak up, but also can de-escalate and then step back and take a time out if they require. And that's really empowering. When you change the dynamics, how you're dealing with a bully, sometimes they can change too. Not always, but it's very empowering for your staff. It's very empowering. And I speak from experience. The first time I did that, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. It's terrifying. And remember, reviewing regularly. And that's why having ongoing training, I mean, we had training once every 15 years. Well, let me tell you, a lot has changed in 15 years with regards to how you define a respectful workplace. Back when I first joined, it was okay for two members to call me Beaver and raisin tits in the office. Now I don't think you can do that anymore, and no one would find that funny. The impact on an organization is you lose the trust of your staff if they feel you don't have their back, and they won't perform as well as if you have their back. And of course, new laws and regulations are changing all the time. Thank goodness. That's only because people are speaking up and they're changing, they're creating this change. But like anything, it takes time. And again, doing nothing, saying nothing, nothing changes. And 6 months from today, is your staff going to be better off emotionally, or are they going to be worse? 6 years from now, is your staff or your workplace going to be better off? Think about it. I personally think 50% of workplace harassment suffer mental health. I think it's probably a lot more than that. $51 billion, I think it's double that, because people will not say I'm being bullied. They'll just, oh, I'm sick. And I know I did the same thing in the beginning. You need after 3 days, you need a certificate from your doctor saying you were sick. But most people, including myself, I would just come back to work on the second day and then work for a few days and then get physically ill and have to take more time off. When in fact, it was mental health and from bullying. So that wouldn't have been included in the annual cost to our economy of lost work hours. So are the employer responsibility? Like I said before, these are only as effective as someone who's willing and who has the right stuff in leadership to move forward with health and safety concerns. And we can always make mistakes and decide, okay, yeah, we did, this is a classic excuse, but we've always done it this way. Yeah. And now we're not, it wasn't working. So we're going to change it. And like any change, there's resistance. There's people who will embrace it and say, Yahoo. And there'll be people who will try to sabotage, because change, when you're a bully or you're used to intimidating and being the boss of people, and you suddenly have to change the way you do that, it's terrifying. And that's why it's important for people to recognize their own unconscious biases, their own patterns of behavior, the way they think and how they interact. Those are important things. And leaders have a profound responsibility. And it's not as easy just to change a workplace culture. I look at it, it's like changing the Titanic. We know what happened there, but it's like glacier speed. It's really, really slow. And when we have these conversations, when you're interested in further training, individually or group, I think that's the best thing, because we can all learn something new from somebody else, especially when we're communicating. Is there something I've said that you didn't know before? Okay, no, I didn't know that. Well, okay, there you go. You have those really inspiring, difficult conversations in order to grow. And I look at it this way: conflict is a sign of growth. So if you have a problem in your workplace, it's a sign of growth. It's not a sign that we close the doors and everybody leaves. It's a sign of growth. And when clients hear that, when family members hear that, when staff hears that, they don't feel like it's a waste of time or a lost cause. It gives them hope. It shows that you care, that this is the way you did it before, it wasn't working, now we're going to try something new. And then you continue forward. You don't have to be like everybody else. And, like, again, there's never an excuse for abuse. Yelling and screaming, and, the only yelling and screaming in your workplace needs to be somebody won the lottery, and somebody did just win $70 million in Manitoba. That was pretty nice. And, or the house is on fire. So that's the only reason people should be yelling in the workplace. And so the employee's responsibility, that's a big thing. So when employees, they have the right to speak up, they have a right to, for their complaints to be taken seriously and without feeling embarrassed, without any kind of retribution or covert bullying. And like I said, as leaders, that's a very difficult thing to do, to address that, because it's hard to identify. And as management, as leaders, it's our responsibility to help the employees feel safe in the workplace, to speak up, to document. And as employees, it's their job, when they see something, to say something and not turn a blind eye. And they want to know that they have the right to speak up, and that there'll be, good conflict resolution. And that's one thing that I speak a lot about to different clients and in training, is recognizing our comfort level with conflict. Most people, if you get them to line up on the back of the room, one side you love conflict, the other side you hate it. Most of them gravitate to the hate it. And there's always somebody who thinks they're really smart, and they go over there, until we start talking about, in any kind of conflict, how do you respond? And I think that's where ongoing training and recognizing our own behaviors, because we are all unique, really helps in addressing workplace conflict, and taking the training and learning the skills we need for effective communication in our workplace. Does anybody have any questions? I don't have the timer up here, but I know I'm just about.
You're doing really good. You're just right on time.
Okay, good. Well, I am a processor, so it's not like this is the first time I've practiced. Because of workplace bullying, I was diagnosed with PTSD. So I recognize my brain works differently than it did 20 years ago. And so that's why I talk very openly about mental health and how the impact of workplace bullying and the impact of management failures has on victims and the workplace in general. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sherry, thank you very much for that. It was great presentation. And it sort of reflects for me a bit that we can never let down our guard of thinking that we're doing well, because it's so insidious that it can happen at any point in time. But the other thing that really crosses my mind, I think, in some of our environments that is a real challenge for management and for staff, sometimes dealing with families and residents. We never like to talk about harassment and bullying.
Oh, yeah.
But absolutely it exists. Yeah. And it's a very difficult situation because of what our responsibilities and obligations are. And they are your customer at the end of the day. Yeah. And people work very hard on that person-centered care. But unfortunately, there are some unpleasant situations. And I think it may be done with what families or residents think is the best intent of demanding or their rights, but sometimes I don't think they're that aware of the consequences in the harassment or even bullying for employees.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I think it's having rules and what do you call it? We have that. When my dad was admitted, it was rights and responsibilities of the care home and rights and responsibilities of the family members and the clients. And that's really great. I don't know how many people actually read that, but I think it's that's a very important point. And there's more people who are good in the workplace that I've observed, and then there's just a few that can ruin a workplace. Mm-hmm. And family members really, and I've watched that, family members who were rude to the staff, and the staff didn't say anything for whatever reason. Maybe they were told not to, I don't know. But whenever I think it's really important that the staff know that you have their back, and it's teaching them or helping them understand that this is not them. This is a reflection of the other person when they say something rude. And then you can always address that with the family member in a letter or private conversation. In our workplace, we don't talk to our staff like that. I don't know how you handle it. Every place is different in how they, it's always better to take them aside and talk to them than do it publicly. Sometimes you have to, because it happens so fast. And quite often staff is surprised. They're doing their very, very best, and someone, walks in and they're just seeing 3 seconds of what's happening with their family member, and they're thinking that, the staff is being rough with them. Well, no, they've just spent half an hour trying to get the socks on. And so they're just finishing up getting this person ready, and a family member will walk in and freak out. And that's not fair. That is a reflection on the family member and not the staff. But it's difficult. Yeah. It's very difficult.
So we'll just leave the floor open for another couple minutes, another minute or so, if there's any questions for Sherry. Oh, I think we've got one in the chat. So Thank you, Sherry, for the presentation. I would like to highlight the challenges that our workforce are experiencing in terms of diversity and inclusion, and how a multicultural staff in the continuing care industry plays a role in. I think we need to bring more training awareness to that as well.
Absolutely. My cousin owns a company that brings in people from the Philippines. He brings in nurses from the Philippines and Asia. And he said that a lot of them they qualify there, and then they have to, they have to make sure they're qualified according to Canadian standards. Okay, that makes sense, right? And he said that's one thing they've experienced. And of course, they have to be able to speak and communicate very well in English, because you're giving meds, equipment and things like that. So you want to be able to you want them to walk from here to there with a little bit of orientation to be able to train. And so, yeah, the workplace culture, he said, the workplace culture has, depending on how many there are, sometimes it's just one. So it's really difficult for them to be by themselves. And he said there is a bit of a challenge, but things are slowly changing to reflect, we are really Canada, we are a mosaic, and now we're bringing in more people to make it a more creative mosaic in the workplace. And yeah, ongoing training on that, on how your unconscious biases might kick in. You just might not know you don't like this person just because of that, where they come from, what they represent, and if we're not aware of that, it will spit out into our behavior towards that person. So just being aware of the cultural diversity is really important. And we can always learn. We can always learn from that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up or any other questions in the chat. So thank you very much, Sherry. Appreciate you joining the CCSA's AGM today, and really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you very much, and keep up the great work.
Thanks very much, Sherry. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Have a good day. Stay safe.
You too.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.